Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So I'm back, James, and you're back. I feel like I haven't seen you for it's over a month, isn't it? I haven't actually seen you. So how are you? Are you getting any better?
I am, thank you. Yeah, it is getting better. But yeah, the reason I haven't been around too much is I've been dealing with this pinched nerve problem in my neck and back. So apparently it's between the 5th and 6th facet joint. So there you go. Just been doing a lot of rest, physio, rehab. I haven't really been able to drive, so I haven't been in Cambridge too much. So as I said to you, as we were kind of getting ready to jump onto the recording, I actually feel quite sociable. I want to go hang out with people, which is weird.
That's good. You've got cabin fever. You need to escape from the cabin.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be nice to have some mobility and to jump in the car and get back into the thick of things. Good job, Cambridge Tech Week is just around the corner.
I know. I was just going to say we go from not seeing each other for ages to pretty much next week. I think it's going to be a manic old week, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Well, you need to get plenty of sleep the weekend before because it's going to be a 5-day marathon.
And how is it, because you're hosting the first day in the Bradfield Centre, aren't you? And then you've got the Tech Futures and Tech Educators Hack Ed activities. So how are they going? Yeah,
really good, thank you. Yeah, I think I caught up with Rachel from Cambridge Wireless, just in late stage planning for the Monday. It's sold out, which is fantastic. So it's going to be a packed room. But there is a wait list. So, if you've got FOMO, do make the effort to sign up because, there will be, I'm sure, some last minute changes to attendance. So you might get a chance to get in. We've got a really nice little mini AI expo as part of that day as well. So you'll be able to see in some demos and chat to some local startups. And then, as you say, we go from that into a 3-day hack day with 116 to 18 year olds. So that's going to be fun. So my only problem is how do I give time to the stuff going on in the centre, but still make time to get into the city to go see some of the conference. So it's going to be a bit of juggling involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've just thought of something which is really funny and I'm just going to put it out there. Monday, which is the day you're hosting, is sold out. And you know which other day is sold out? The Wednesday, which is the Startup to Scale Up Day in Central Cambridge. And guess who's hosting that?
Oh, is it you?
Yes. So do you reckon it's the Cambridge Tech Podcast effect? Yeah.
Well, obviously, we can mobilise the millions of listeners to the podcast and just sell any venue out.
Oh God, I hope people are laughing rather than taking that seriously. Okay, so on a serious note, actually Wednesday is sold out, but they've just found another room where they're going to stream live, so people can still get together. It just won't be in the main room. So that the team are trying to think of all these really creative ways of getting more people still there and benefiting from those connections that you make. So Wednesday's sold out. Innovation Alley, so the target was 50 companies. You just talked about the mini zone that will be in the Bradfield Centre. The target was 50 companies in Innovation Alley this year, which was up on last year. Guess how many they've got?
Is it over 50?
It is.
Wow. Okay. So there's a health and safety issue there, is there?
No. It's all Fiona's worked it out perfectly. There's 84. 84. I mean, it's just
not far off from doubling it then.
I know. And actually there was someone who contacted the team at the end of last week to come in as well. So who knows? So Innovation Alley is again going to be the beating heart of the entire week. That's on Tuesday, Wednesday. And because that's people who'll be more moving in and out and going between sessions, capacity on that is huge. So definitely try and get your tickets for that. And then obviously Thursday's the tech deep dives for those that want to deep dive into quantum or photonics or semiconductor or medtech, health tech, all of those types of topics, climate tech. So it's great. And then they've just announced some heavy hitters as well. So the Right Honourable Peter Kyle, who was appointed Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology at the start of summer, is going to be doing the government welcome to the conference, which is really great, and talking about the government's AI policy. Nick Clegg has been announced announced before, but he's going to be there, again, talking about AI. And there's a minister from Morocco joining as well. And that's going to be really interesting because we talk a lot about Cambridge, we talk about, America and other continents, but actually understanding what's going on in AI in Morocco and Africa is also I think that's going to be really different as well.
Do you know what I really love is just the really huge leaps that we've seen every year that Tech Week has been running. This is only the third year, right? And from what it was just 2 years ago to what it is now, in terms of the volume of attendees, the venues selling out, the names that are coming to speak. I mean, can you just imagine what it's going to be like in another 3 years' time? Cambridge needs to build some arenas because Tech Week's going to need some big venues.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be a London Tech Week, and nor does it need to be. But the fact is, we've got all of these global players coming in here now, and I don't know, do we want it in a great big arena?
No, probably not.
Yeah, because that's part of the perk of Cambridge, isn't it? That you get to have dialogues, you get to meet people, things actually happen here, and if you go in a big arena, then maybe that doesn't quite work. So, and I'm not quite sure where we would put a big arena, but we'll leave someone else to worry about that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Well, so that's super exciting. Make sure you've got your ticket, and no doubt we'll bump into you there. So should we move on to this week's piece of news? Not much tech news this week, but we've got the one story, and actually it's around a company that we've spoken to before on the podcast, which is Xampler. They've had some good news. They've just raised 14 million to fast track its mission to replace single-use plastics with alternatives made from plants. The round was led by Emerald Technology Ventures, BGF and Matawi Ventures, with a follow-on investment from existing investors, which include Cambridge and London-based Amadeus Capital Partners and Horizon Ventures. The funding will see Xampler's revolutionary Moro materials replace more than 10 billion units of the most polluting single-use plastic, including plastic linings found in takeaway boxes, coffee cups and sachets over the next 5 years, the company says. So that's fabulous, and you can go back and listen to our interview with Alexander French, the CEO of Xampler, which was back in episode 142.
Brilliant. So let's move on to today's episode, where we talk to Ricardo Herreros-Symons from Speechmatics. Hi, Ricardo. Welcome to Cambridge Tech Podcast.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. So you are a founding member of Speechmatics, and you're now the Chief Strategy Officer, having done various roles over the last decade. So let's start talking a little bit about you and your journey. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in Speechmatics.
Speechmatics, it was a funny start. It came around as a bit of a university project. I'd done a number of years studying in Cambridge, and I'd learned how to row there. And I basically wanted to give a crack at the boat race, but unfortunately I'd run out of years of degree to do so. But fortunately you can do some masters there, and one of the options there is management, where it was added onto my degree in modern and medieval languages, which is very interesting, but maybe not the most applicable to the modern AI world. And so I saw a chance to do the management course, which gets you up to speed across lots of different important business skills, I guess, whilst also at the same time giving me a chance to have a crack at beating Oxford in the boat race. And at the end of that, there's a 2 to 3 month placement where you find a company of some sort and work with them. And most people go and work at a big bank like HSBC, or a big consultancy where you do a project and essentially they look at it at the end, and quite frankly most of them throw it in the bin. Not because it's not good, but you're not as much value add there. But as I was going through the list of companies, there was Cantab Research there, which had this new entity called Speechmatics, which had a chief scientist and essentially the founder, Tony Robinson, and not much else. And so myself and a couple of other rowers picked up that project, and we got involved. And essentially in those 3 months, we managed to prove that the idea behind Speechmatics, a speech to text that you put in the cloud and can be used to transcribe in a way that didn't require any training on someone's specific voice, we proved that could work. So I got involved, graduated afterwards. I'd made a sale, so they said, okay, do you want to come along and lead the sales effort, which I did. And over the last decade, I've done pretty much everything in the business. So I've sold the technology. I pretended to be a machine learning engineer. I've worked on the product side. I've led the revenue org. Frankly, a bit of everything. Led a lot of the investment discussions too. sort of my one rule is that I shouldn't touch the code base. If I touch the code base, then quite frankly, we would not be here having this conversation because we'd have gone out of business a long time ago. Although, even I am starting to question that now in this modern world, because with the advent of sort of the amount of coding capability you can get from LLMs, quite frankly, even I can integrate our API. So I do think it's a bit of a brave new world out there. But that's a brief history of where I've been with Speechmatics, and that's obviously taking it from a couple of people up to sort of raising $50 million in funding in 2022, 150 odd person business, going through the classic post 22, sort of every business sort of tightening the belts a little bit, and now sort of on a really sort of exciting growth trajectory again.
Right, so we're going to go through some of those things that you've just highlighted, but the first one I have to ask, because everyone's going to want to know the answer, did you win the boat race?
No, I didn't quite. I made the sort of the reserve boat, and I lost by a very small margin as well. So a failure in that sense, but a massive success in terms of everything else, because all the people I met, and frankly the last 10 years of my life in this awesome company, wouldn't be where they are today without that. So I'd say a sort of victory in defeat.
Okay, good. I'm glad I haven't brought up a terrible memory for you then. So let's come back and talk through the company itself in a moment and the growth of the company. I do find one thing you said there, again, quite interesting. So last week we had Seb Lesware on from One Spatial, and he talked about his journey, and he's done, like you, lots of the different roles, including the engineering roles. And it just makes me think, do you think that careers are changing now? We're seeing more people staying within an organisation and doing multiple roles, because there has to be a benefit to that.
Yeah, so funny you should ask. I'm sort of just about to embark on a blog on this very topic. In my view, sort of if you go back all the way to the Industrial Revolution, so far before Speechmatics, obviously, we entered a world of specialization. I think like Adam Smith sort of took the process of making a pin and divided it into 19 different processes that could all be specialized on an industrial assembly line. And obviously specialization gets you an incredibly long way in terms of what you can achieve, like parallel processing and effectiveness. But my view now, especially with the advent of AI, of LLMs, is that it is so important to be a bit of a generalist in what you do. On the one hand, because you don't know which jobs are going to sort of be attacked by AI, but also because having an understanding of the full product cycle from creation to selling it to the customer to customer success gives you an ability to affect things so much more usefully within the business. If I reasonably could actually build my own website now, I reasonably could sort of create an app that brings together different APIs for different capabilities. And the fact that I'm able to do that with essentially no engineering or coding experience, it's nuts. And so if you think about the fact that everyone sort of has to get to this point where they need to understand more and more of what's going on to be able to be effective in the different areas of the business that they are influencing as well. So I think, yes, absolutely massively important to be generalist if you can. Dip your toe into things, try experiencing being on the front lines. I know a lot of CEOs still do things where they will sit in their contact center and they will take sort of first line support calls just to get an idea of what the day-to-day is for their customers, all the way to understanding sort of what the engineering challenges are on the other end. So, I think it is changing, and I think we're going to see it change even more as we go forwards.
Yeah, well, I will look forward to reading that blog, because I'm also a real advocate of generalists. I think it's underrated for sure, so, and maybe the future direction. But let's move on and actually talk about what we're here to talk about. And I would like, first of all, to ask you to just give people a bit of an insight. That people listen to this podcast because they like lots of different types of tech. So I'm not going to assume that anyone knows very much about the speech technology market. So do you want to just give us a little bit of an introduction to the market, how things have changed in the decade that you've been working within it, and what you see is going to happen in that marketplace?
Yeah, so I'd say that in the last decade it has absolutely transformed. If I was speaking to people previously about how they interact with speech technology 10 years ago, maybe sort of a little bit with Siri, maybe some really painful sort of conversations on the phone when you're trying to book going to the cinema or something like that, and you've got your automated, like, not press 1 for yes, but did you say so and so place? It's like, no, I didn't. Whereas now we are interacting with speech technology everywhere. So Speechmatics and speech recognition, essentially anything that takes audio, so sort of speech, a very human thing, and turns it into text, which is, as soon as it's into text format, it's binary. It can be used to drive 1,000 different things. And the use cases are absolutely myriad. So everything from a very common and simple use cases, which is like the subtitling you see on your TV. That will, in most cases now, unless you're looking at sort of high value sort of films, nearly everything live is either done by a re-speaker using speech to text technology, or it's being used directly with speech to text technology. So all those subtitles, that is speech to text already. Any kind of interaction with where you're speaking to an agent, which is the area which is really growing right now, is also using speech to text technology. I imagine that this conversation here will get recorded. It will be transcribed as part of that. It will be put through an LLM to get the summaries and the chapters and the note-taking and information. I expect all doctor-patient interactions to be recorded and transcribed in the next couple of years. In my view, the amount of audio that will be transcribed for a use case over the next year or two is going to 10, 20x, just because it's now at a price point where it's fine to just turn it on for everything. It takes the mundane tasks, the tasks of having to edit and play around with and find all the gobbets that you want to use this for a certain tagline, and it just makes it automatically doable. So I just can't see a world in which this isn't going to be mundane in every single person's life.
Yeah. And with that then becomes some kind of ethical implications, doesn't there? So what are your views and how do you address this within Speechmatics around, accountability, transparency, even bias, things like that?
We put an awful lot of effort into sort of making sure that the engines that we produce are incredibly unbiased. If you look at all of the data that we've come out with and the test sets that you've got, ours is the one that shows the least difference between voices which are sort of perhaps more commonly heard or recorded and less commonly heard or recorded. Our tagline is understand every voice. The way we build our models is we train on millions of hours of unlabeled audio. This unlabeled audio essentially means that our speech engine gets a world tour of what everybody sounds like, and as a result means that we do really well on essentially understanding different voices and not having a preference or a higher sort of fidelity to one type of accent or a particular cohort compared to another. One of the other things we do as well is the way we build our models is we use less data, but we are more careful with it, which means that much more of our data is curated than in some of the other sort of speech-to-text models that you'll see out there. This means we have sort of far fewer hallucinations in what we do. Essentially, we don't create random text output that isn't there. And as a result, we've got an engine that is much more relatable to what has actually been said. And even when it does go wrong, it doesn't go wrong by spewing out stuff that is just made up. It might just be a sort of a slight incorrection of what has been said.
So can you just tell us a little bit more then about the products and services that you do offer?
Yeah, sure. So the one that is our bread and butter since day one has been speech to text, take audio, convert it into text, drive lots of different types of use cases, edtech, closed captioning, police camera recording, contact center, sort of either being the agent itself, listening into calls, giving them advice, searching for sensitive information. Let's say you call up your bank and you say, this is where I live, this is my password, etc. Removing that information from it, we drive things like that. So speech to text, anything that turns audio to text, that is us 100%. Separately to that, we do some post-processing sort of APIs on top of it. So things like translation, things like sort of summarization of the content that has been produced, creating auto chapters, etc., etc. And then the new thing that is coming out at the moment is our text-to-speech. So instead of taking audio and turning it into words, you create words and you can turn them into voices. The reason this is so valuable, obviously, you can transcribe a file once, so we can get one transcript out of this, but we can then translate it into 50 different languages, and then we could dub it up into 50 different voices. 50 times more material, gives a global reach, greater understanding, so obviously a huge amount of value there. It's also going to be the part that is driving what I'm calling the voice AI revolution, which is why there is going to be so many people who just in their day-to-day lives are going to be interacting either with their personal assistants, your her type stuff, or Jarvis from Iron Man, that personal assistant that I just do believe will be talking to and say, hey, insert personal assistant name, book me a train ticket to so-and-so at this time. That sort of agentic AI is going to be driven by voice, but the responses from it, the text-to-speech part, oh yeah, sure, I found 3 trains for you. This one up to Cambridge is the faster one, but actually it's more expensive. Do you want to go for the peak or non-peak one? that side of things is now what we're bringing out to. So text to speech as well as the speech to text. And that's like a hidden launch on our portal at the moment, but we'll be going bigger with that over the next couple of months.
I hadn't really thought about that until you said it, but of course it's super logical, isn't it? So I was thinking it's the doing the to text and translating, but it's actually doing it the other way. So you're doing the voice side of it as well. So it makes perfect sense. And I can think of loads of instances where people are definitely starting to use that. How do you then handle different dialects and things like that? Is that something that you can factor in there? Where do you put things so specific like a dialect on the list of technology development that you have to do?
And is that from a text-to-speech perspective or a speech-to-text perspective?
Oh, well, either. So originally I was thinking it was to text, but actually now, because of what you just said, it's both ways, isn't it?
Yeah, so the vast majority of what we do right now is to text. And obviously we deal with lots of different accents in that. To be honest, I almost prefer a use case that has less common accents, because I know that we're more likely to win the deal because we do really well on harder use cases, so where there's less data for it. On the text-to-speech side of things, at the moment we're pretty early on in the journey. We've got a few different voices, but we will be adding to that. And obviously the goal is you probably want to have at least 10, 20 voices per language that you're doing with a range of accents. You want to be as representative as you can. What you tend to see is there's probably, between 50 and 150 odd languages that get thrown around by the majority of the players in the space. And being able to have like a range of accents for those languages is the key bit. And obviously people have personal preference of what kind of voice they like, right? As in, I might like one voice that you don't like, and so we'll need to build those out. But that also becomes quite a complex space, because getting access to sort of data to create those voices is expensive and complicated. And then you sort of ask yourself the question, okay, so do we create synthetic voices where actually these aren't real voices at all, but they're machine-generated voices, so there's no licensing requirements on them, but they sound a bit more made up. So that's one route. And then the other thing that we're looking at too is zero-shot voices, which is where I could say 10 seconds of audio. I can say a simple sentence like this sentence I'm saying right now, and then we can generate a voice that sounds like me, which is terrifying, but also very cool. And if you think about the use case of maybe wanting to have a multilingual call center where I could work in a French call center by having someone call in French, it gets translated to me, I respond in English, it gets translated into French in my voice, and then it would give a French response in that voice as well.
So I've gone completely off on a tangent here now, Ricardo, which quite often happens with me. Like the podcast here, I don't actually need to be sitting here asking questions, do I? We could get all of that done by AI, and then, we can get all the reporting of it done. We could just completely do ourselves out of a job in the most positive way.
Google's got a thing called Notebook LM, which is essentially if you give it a certain bit of information, it can create a podcast between two artificially generated agents who have a discussion about a certain topic, which will be a very in-depth discussion. And all you have to do is just provide the text that you want it to talk about. So you can feed it all of the information about the Cambridge tech scene. So newspapers, articles, that sort of stuff. Feed that all in and say, right, talk to me about what's the most exciting thing going on in the Cambridge tech scene. And it will create pretty quickly a one-on-one podcast-style conversation. It's obviously not going to be as good as this. It's not going to ask questions as you would, but it is scary how real it can sound for sure.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things you mentioned earlier on was about medical healthcare, note-taking, transforming patients. How big is that market? Because I expect it's pretty huge, actually, on a global basis.
3 or 4 years ago, Nuance had a big presence in this space, and it was mainly for medical dictation. So as opposed to actually transcribing a conversation like this, it would be the doctor at the end of it saying, right, I just saw a patient, blah, blah, that they were showing signs of gout. I'd recommend giving X milligrams of Y drug. I don't know what you give for gout. But nowadays, every doctor-patient, every patient psychiatrist, patient physio interaction, I can see all of them being transcribed, if people are happy to have them transcribed, within the next few years. And the volume, and when I think about this in volume of hours, because it's the easiest way of considering how big that market is enormous. What we've worked out is that across Europe, it's probably going to be a market of somewhere in the region of 3 to 5 billion hours of audio. And just to give you an idea, if we were able to monetize that that would be over $1 billion of revenue for us, which is obviously not where we are right now. We'd love to be there, but that is how big it is going to get. It is enormous, the scale of what is going to be transcribed, because it makes everyone's life more efficient. The doctor doesn't need to spend 10 minutes at the end of the appointment making up the notes. They can do it in 2 minutes, make sure that everything's okay. They can see an extra couple of patients a day. Makes it, or actually just have a bit more of a rest, which should also be nice too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, that's the beauty of technology, isn't it? It's about using it to get rid of those processes that take too long. But there is also then the consideration that more and more data needs to be stored somewhere, and that has an implication on climate, because lots of data centers storing lots of data that may or may not be used is an interesting challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, the big challenge is the processing of that data. So actually, like the requests that the LLM makes. The good news about what we do is because we turn things into text, relatively speaking, compared to an image, it's thousands of times smaller than an image. Compared to a video, it's thousands of times smaller again. So in terms of the actual overall space that the text would be taking compared to other stuff, it's relatively small. But the processing of that text to sort of give you a summary or to give you sort of recommendations, that is what really uses a lot of water and a lot of power.
Yeah, indeed. And that's a whole different conversation. So let's end with a little bit going back to the company, going back to Speechmatics. So you raised, I think you mentioned it earlier on, the Series B, 62 million a couple of years ago. What do you think are going to be the next big milestones for Speechmatics, and what's your plan? You've got cash in the bank to do these things. How do you plan to take them forward?
Yeah, so it's a fun space at the moment because everything is moving so incredibly quickly. You can't really afford to stand still. From our perspective, the main goal at the moment is just getting as much of this usage as possible. If I say that the volume of audio going to be transcribed is going to be 10xing over the next year or two, we need to make sure we've got as much of that on our platform as possible. So as much of that also on our platform, but without direct touch from us. So as many people signing up, using us, trying us, testing us, but without actually having to speak to anyone at the business to start with. And then obviously we'll speak to them afterwards once they grow to a certain size. But right now, the goal is get as much volume as possible. Stage 2, build the revenue from that. And then sort of there's a good few options for us. One argument is to say, you know what, first half of next year, we've got some really nice metrics here. Let's accelerate, let's get some more investment in, because there's a million different things we want to do. We want to build out the text to speech, get a whole range of voices on top of that. We sit there with the engineering team thinking, oh my word, there are so many things that we know would be immediately high value to what we do. Can we build those things out? But then there's also, at the moment, a lot of the world values profitability, right? In terms of being able to be lean and efficient in what you're doing. And I think trying to sort of manage that balance is really important. But my view is this feels like a wave, a revolution, whatever you want to call it. And we just got to make sure that we are taking as much of that as it goes sort of up and to the right as possible. And then that will give us loads of options for the future.
Yeah, it's another perfect timing situation for a Cambridge-based company to really go and capitalise on this market, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So thank you, Ricardo, very much. You've given us a good insight into the speech technology. Thank you. You've given us a good insight into the market, and it's really great to hear some more about Speechmatics. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Great to meet you. Great to talk about Speechmatics as always.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.
If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.